My mortgage application was rejected due to terrible credit. Impossible, I thought. I've never missed a payment in my life. When I pulled my credit report, I found 6 maxed out credit cards, 3 personal loans, and a $52,000 car loan, all taken out by someone with my exact social security number and a signature that matched mine perfectly. My twin brother had forgotten that twins might look identical, but I know every financial crime trick in the book. My name is David Richardson, 34 years old, forensic accountant for the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Financial Crimes Division. For 8 years, I've been tracking identity thieves, credit card fraudsters, and elaborate financial schemes. I have testified in federal court, helped recover millions in stolen assets, and put dozens of criminals behind bars. What I never expected was to become a victim of the very crimes I investigate daily. It started on a Tuesday morning when Sarah, my real estate agent, called with confusion in her voice. David, I don't understand. Your credit application came back declined. The bank says your debt-to-income ratio is completely off the charts. I was sitting in my Arlington office, reviewing case files for a major credit fraud investigation, when her words hit me like a physical blow. That's impossible, I said, setting down my coffee. I have excellent credit. I've been pre-approved for mortgages before. Sarah read me the preliminary report. Credit score of 487, total debt of $127,000, multiple recent inquiries, several accounts and collections. My hand started shaking as I wrote down the numbers. This wasn't just a mistake. This was systematic identity theft. I immediately pulled my official credit report through the secure government portal I use for investigations. What I saw made my blood run cold. 6 credit cards I'd never applied for, all maxed out. Chase Freedom $15,000, Capital One Venture $12,000, American Express Gold $25,000, Discover $8,000, Citi Double Cash $18,000, Bank of America $22,000. 3 personal loans totaling $47,000 from online lenders I'd never heard of. And the big one, a $52,000 auto loan from BMW Financial Services for a car I'd never seen. Every application had my correct social security number, my current address, and my employment information. The signatures were flawless matches for my handwriting. But there was something else that made my skin crawl. The phone number listed on most applications wasn't mine. It was a number I recognized immediately because I'd been calling it my entire life. It belonged to my identical twin brother, Marcus. Marcus and I had been born 12 minutes apart. Me first, him following. We'd shared everything growing up. A bedroom, clothes, friends, even girlfriends who sometimes couldn't tell us apart. But as adults, we drifted apart. He worked in sales for a tech company in downtown DC, lived in a trendy apartment in Georgetown, and had always been the more outgoing twin. He was charming, persuasive, and had a gift for talking his way into and out of situations. I spent the rest of that Tuesday pulling every piece of documentation I could access legally. Credit applications, loan documents, bank statements that had been submitted for verification. Everything pointed to someone who knew my personal information intimately. Someone who could replicate my signature perfectly. Someone who looked exactly like me and could walk into any bank with my driver's license. The car loan was the smoking gun. According to the BMW dealership records, David Richardson had purchased a 2023 BMW M340i in Alpine White. The salesperson's notes mentioned that the buyer paid $8,000 cash down and was approved for financing on the spot. The buyer had provided a driver's license, social security card, and recent pay stubs from the FBI. But here's what caught my attention. The delivery address wasn't my apartment in Arlington. It was Marcus's building in Georgetown. That night, I drove past Marcus's apartment complex, and there it was. A pristine white BMW with dealer plates, parked in the spot assigned to his unit. I sat in my car for 30 minutes, staring at the $60,000 vehicle that was technically mine, purchased with my stolen identity, but sitting in my brother's parking space. The next morning, I began what I call a quiet investigation. I didn't confront Marcus, didn't alert the banks, didn't file police reports. Instead, I used my federal access to trace every fraudulent transaction. I mapped out a timeline that painted a picture of calculated systematic identity theft that had been going on for 4 months. What I discovered over the next week made me realize this wasn't impulsive fraud. This was a carefully planned operation that exploited our identical appearance and my brother's knowledge of my personal information. Marcus had been using my identity like a credit card, systematically extracting every dollar of borrowing power I had built up over 15 years of responsible financial management. The pattern was sophisticated. He never made large purchases all at once. Instead, he'd apply for one credit card, use it responsibly for a few weeks to establish a payment history, then apply for another. He rotated between different types of lenders, major banks, credit unions, online platforms. He was careful to use different locations, spreading applications across Virginia, Maryland, and DC to avoid raising flags at any single institution. But Marcus had made mistakes, and I found every single one. He'd used his own cell phone number on applications, thinking banks wouldn't cross-reference contact information. He'd been sloppy about addresses, sometimes using my apartment, sometimes his own, creating inconsistencies that would be red flags to any investigator. Most importantly, he'd underestimated his twin brother's ability to trace financial crimes. I pulled surveillance footage from 3 different bank branches where David Richardson had appeared to open accounts or increase credit limits. The quality was excellent, and watching the footage was surreal. It was like watching myself commit crimes I had no memory of. Marcus wore similar clothes to mine, had copied my mannerisms, even styled his hair the same way. To anyone who didn't know us intimately, he was indistinguishable from me. The BMW purchase was his biggest score and his biggest mistake. I obtained the dealership's entire file through official channels, claiming it was part of an ongoing federal investigation into auto loan fraud. The salesperson, Jennifer Walsh, had noted that the buyer seemed nervous and unfamiliar with BMW features, asking basic questions about the car's technology that seemed odd for someone financing such an expensive vehicle. More damaging was the insurance application. Marcus had been required to get comprehensive coverage before driving off the lot. He'd used my name and social security number, but listed his own address and phone number. When I called the insurance company, they confirmed the policy was active, and that David Richardson had been making monthly payments from a checking account I'd never opened. That checking account became the center of my investigation. Marcus had opened it at a small community bank in Maryland, using my identity but his own contact information. He'd been depositing his paychecks from his sales job, then using the account to make minimum payments on all the fraudulent credit cards and loans. It was a sophisticated money laundering operation designed to keep the accounts current and avoid triggering collection activities. But here's what Marcus didn't understand about his forensic accountant brother. I don't just trace money, I trace behavior patterns. And his pattern was becoming clear. He was living far beyond his sales salary, funding an expensive lifestyle with my stolen credit. The BMW was just the beginning. I discovered he'd used my identity to lease a luxury apartment upgrade, falsifying employment verification by claiming to work for the FBI with a six-figure salary. He'd applied for a high-limit American Express Platinum card and used it to book a vacation to Turks and Caicos. He'd even opened a business credit line, claiming to be starting a consulting firm. The most infuriating discovery was personal. Marcus had used my identity to ask out Elena Vasquez, a lawyer he'd met at a DC networking event. He'd told her he was an FBI agent specializing in financial crimes, had taken her to expensive restaurants paid for with fraudulent credit cards, and had even brought her to family events as David's girlfriend. My own family thought I was dating someone I'd never met. By Friday of that week, I'd compiled a complete financial profile of Marcus's fraud operation. Total stolen credit, $127,000. Monthly minimum payments, $3,400. His actual salary, $85,000 per year. The mathematics were unsustainable. He was heading for a financial cliff, and when he hit it, my identity would be destroyed along with his. But I wasn't ready to make my move yet. Marcus had been sloppy, but I needed to be perfect. I was building a case that would not only recover every stolen dollar, but would also protect my credit and reputation while ensuring Marcus faced serious legal consequences. I needed one more piece of evidence. Proof that he understood exactly what he was doing and the harm he was causing. I decided to set a trap using the one thing Marcus valued most: appearance of success. I created a fictional investment opportunity that would be irresistible to someone already drunk on easy money and convinced he was smarter than the system watching him. Through a contact at the Securities and Exchange Commission, I created a fake investment newsletter called Federal Insider Trading Reports, with a professional-looking website and fictional testimonials. The newsletter claimed to offer investment tips based on insider knowledge of federal investigations that would affect stock prices. It was the kind of get-rich-quick scheme that would appeal to someone already engaged in financial fraud. I mailed the newsletter to Marcus's apartment, making sure it looked official and exclusive. The hook was a fabricated story about an upcoming federal raid on a major corporation that would crash its stock price, creating opportunities for short-selling profits. The newsletter claimed that select federal agents were quietly making these trades to supplement their government salaries. Marcus took the bait immediately. Within 3 days, he'd opened a margin trading account at an online brokerage using my identity, and had started making aggressive short trades based on the fake newsletter's recommendations. He'd borrowed an additional $25,000 against one of the fraudulent credit lines to fund his trading account. But here's what Marcus didn't know. I had designed every recommendation in that newsletter to lose money. Every stock pick was carefully chosen to move in the opposite direction of his trades. I was using his greed and my professional knowledge of market manipulation to create a financial disaster that would expose his entire operation. While Marcus was losing money on fake stock tips, I was documenting every trade through official SEC monitoring systems. Each transaction was another count of wire fraud, securities fraud, and identity theft. The evidence was piling up faster than his losses. The trap worked perfectly. Within 2 weeks, Marcus had lost the entire $25,000 he'd borrowed for trading, plus another $15,000 in margin calls. His fraudulent credit accounts were approaching their limits, and he was falling behind on minimum payments. The sustainable house of cards he'd built was collapsing under the weight of his own greed. That's when I received the call I'd been expecting. Marcus, using my identity, had applied for an emergency credit line increase with Chase Bank. The application triggered a comprehensive review because of the recent heavy borrowing activity. Chase had decided to investigate potential fraud and had scheduled an in-person verification meeting for David Richardson at their downtown branch. Marcus was trapped. He could either appear at the meeting and risk being exposed during detailed questioning, or he could miss the appointment and trigger a fraud investigation anyway. Either choice would bring everything crashing down. I knew Marcus would try to attend the meeting. His whole fraud scheme depended on maintaining the illusion that he was me, and he'd grown overconfident after months of successful deception. He'd convinced himself that he could talk his way through anything. So I made sure I was at that Chase Bank branch 30 minutes before Marcus's scheduled appointment, sitting in the parking lot with a perfect view of the entrance. I had my federal credentials, a complete file of evidence documenting every fraudulent transaction, and a recording device to capture whatever happened next. At exactly 2:30 p.m., I watched my identical twin brother walk into the bank, carrying a briefcase and wearing a suit identical to ones I owned. He looked confident, prepared, completely unaware that his forensic accountant brother had spent weeks building an airtight case against him. I waited 5 more minutes, then walked into the same bank, approached the reception desk, and said the words I'd been rehearsing for weeks. "I'm David Richardson, FBI forensic accountant. I believe someone is impersonating me in your building right now, and I have evidence of extensive identity theft and bank fraud." The look on Marcus's face when I walked into that conference room will stay with me forever. He was sitting across from 2 Chase Bank fraud investigators, confidently explaining his need for additional credit, when the door opened and his identical twin brother appeared with FBI credentials and a thick folder of evidence. "Hello, Marcus," I said quietly, taking the seat next to him. "I think we need to talk." The colour drained from his face. His hands started shaking. The confident salesman persona he'd been projecting crumbled instantly, replaced by a trapped animal looking for escape routes that didn't exist. The bank investigators were initially confused, then fascinated, then horrified as I laid out the entire scheme. I handed them copies of every fraudulent application, every forged signature, every false document Marcus had created using my identity. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Marcus tried to salvage the situation with the same charm that had gotten him this far. "David, come on. We're brothers. We can work this out. I was going to pay everything back. I just needed more time." But his voice was desperate, pleading. Nothing like the confident man who had walked into that bank 30 minutes earlier. "You've had 4 months to work this out," I replied calmly. "Instead, you've destroyed my credit, stolen my identity, and committed federal crimes using my name. The time for working things out privately ended when you decided to gamble my financial future on stock tips from a fake newsletter I created specifically to catch you." That revelation hit him like a physical blow. The investment newsletter, the trading losses, the margin calls that had accelerated his downfall, it had all been an elaborate trap designed by his own brother. Marcus realized he hadn't just been caught, he'd been systematically outmaneuvered by someone who understood financial crime better than he understood his own schemes. The bank investigators called the FBI field office immediately. Within an hour, federal agents arrived to take Marcus into custody on charges of identity theft, bank fraud, wire fraud, securities fraud, and mail fraud. Each credit card application was a separate felony. Each loan application was another count. The stock trading added securities violations. In total, Marcus was facing 47 federal charges. As they led him away in handcuffs, Marcus turned to me with tears in his eyes. "I never meant for it to go this far, David. I just wanted what you had. The respect, the success, the life where people take you seriously." "You could have built your own life," I told him. "Instead, you tried to steal mine." The aftermath took months to resolve, but my FBI position and the comprehensive evidence I'd gathered made the process smoother than most identity theft cases. Every fraudulent account was closed and removed from my credit report. The banks recovered their losses through Marcus's assets and garnished wages. The BMW was repossessed and sold. His luxury apartment lease was terminated. Marcus pled guilty to all charges in exchange for a radder sentence of 18 months in federal prison, 3 years of supervised probation, and full restitution of $127,000, plus legal costs. He also had to undergo psychological counseling and financial management training. Our family was devastated. Our parents couldn't understand how one son could systematically destroy the other's life for months while sitting at the same dinner table, pretending everything was normal. Family gatherings became awkward affairs where Marcus's absence hung over every conversation. But there was an unexpected positive outcome. Elena Vasquez, the lawyer Marcus had been dating using my identity, contacted me after his arrest. She'd been completely deceived, thinking she was dating an FBI agent named David Richardson. When she learned the truth, she was mortified and apologetic. "I should have known something was wrong," she said when we met for coffee to discuss the situation. He knew so little about FBI work for someone who claimed to specialize in financial crimes. "He's always been a good actor," I replied. Even I didn't suspect anything until the credit report. Eleanor and I began dating 6 months later. It turned out we had genuine compatibility that Marcus had never bothered to discover during his deception. She appreciated my actual work, understood the demands of federal investigations, and respected the methodical approach that had brought down my own brother.